You clearly awaken the Drunken Sword Immortal System, where you get stronger by drinking, yet you transmigrated into a sect that forbids alcohol. And all disciples are not allowed to leave the mountain unless it's for demon-slaying missions. You tried several times to sneak down the mountain for a drink, but with your chair-refining stage cultivation, you couldn't even break through the sect's barrier. This made your already useless self even more useless. Until this time, you got the chance to go down the mountain for supplies. So you went down and got completely hammered. Who knew that on your way back, you would accidentally barge into the room of the sect's eldest senior sister, accompanied by several earth-shattering screams. Instantly, the whole sect was alerted, and you were thrown onto the plaza by a crowd of female disciples. While you were sleeping, your consciousness began practicing the peerless sword art given by the system, the Great River Sword with the Drunken God Sword's boost. Even with an insignificant cultivation, you could easily slay a tribulation stage expert. At the same time, the news of you invading the Sword Feather Peak spread quickly. Hundreds, even thousands of disciples flew towards Sword Feather Peak on their swords, and in no time, the entire sky above Sword Feather Peak was completely surrounded. Just then, a white light flashed across the sky and landed with a deafening boom. It was the third senior brother, Yuan, who already had a divine transformation stage 7th layer cultivation. Everyone in Nine Sword Mountain knew that senior brother Yuan was Yuan's #1 pursuer. Soon, Bai Yue, the master of Sword Feather Peak, also arrived late. Bai Yue was a late-stage completion realm expert, just one step away from the tribulation stage. His favorite disciple on normal days was Yuan. Bai Yu's face turned grim when he saw you passed out on the ground and asked what exactly happened. A female disciple wiped the sweat from her forehead and quickly went forward to briefly narrate the whole incident. Bai Yu's face darkened and he snorted coldly. Breaking the Nine Sword Mountain's ban on alcohol and committing the crime of intruding into my Sword Feather Peak is unforgivable. So what if he's a disciple from Sword Come Peak? First, cripple his cultivation, and then hand him over to the main Peak's Law Enforcement Hall. Just then, Yuan, who had tittied herself up, also walked out from the side hall with a group of female disciples. Yuan gritted her teeth as she looked at you sleeping on the plaza, feeling both like crying and laughing, recalling the fiery feeling from earlier. Her cheeks couldn't help but start to flush again. Yuan, are you alright seeing Yuan come out? Bai Yue had yet to speak when Yuan, his face livid, had already rushed over. Don't worry, I'll make the decision for you. Yuan's eyes couldn't hide his murderous intent. In the next second, he transformed into a sword ray and shot toward you. He hadn't even touched his goddess's hand, yet she had been violated, so he had to be the one to cripple you to ease his hatred. Meanwhile, you were already in a dream? Wandering in a river of swords, quickly comprehending the Great River Sword intent. The Great River Sword comes from the sky, and within a foot of my body, I am invincible while sleeping. You murmur the dream-like verses unconsciously. In the next second, the Che and blood within your body surged, and a sword intent like a roaring river burst forth. Yuan, who had just reached your side, felt an extremely strong force coming at him, and his body flew backward uncontrollably. The entire Sword Feather Peak, above and below, instantly fell silent. Even Bai Yue, who was unable to stop Yuan in time, was shocked Yuan was actually sent flying, and by a member of the miscellaneous hall who hadn't even reached the foundation establishment stage. You need to know that there was a major realm difference. My head hurts ... at this time. You slowly opened your drunken eyes, sleeping, yet not waking. There was still a foolish smile on your face, looking at the countless disciples from the Nine Sword Mountain around you. You drunkenly let out a belch and then gradually pinched your cheek. It doesn't hurt. Am I dreaming? How else could I be at Sword Feather Peak? Man, that drink was good. Even in a dream, it's so real. Since it's a dream, then I'm the boss here. I can't be bullied by Yuan. Saying that, you staggered to your feet, looked around like a sleepwalker, and finally focused your gaze on Yuan, who was not far away in shock. I see. No wonder I could duel with this lapdog. Yuan, even in a dream? It's because senior sister Liu is here. Huh, you woke up, but your alcohol hasn't worn off. You still think you're dreaming, and you carelessly said out loud what you're always thinking. Senior brother Yuan is Yuan's lapdog. Everyone knew that, but no one dared to say it. You hiccuped drunkenly. The alcohol rushed again, under the gaze of countless shocked eyes. You stumbled towards Yuan, who was at a loss. Yuan was both shocked and furious. Not caring about your drunken state, she raised her hand to slap you. Who would have thought you'd be faster? You grabbed her wrist. and forcefully pulled her into your embrace instantly. The entire sword feather peak scene exploded. Your bizarre moves shocked all the disciples, yet you were completely unaware that this was reality. You were still holding Liu Yuan, giggling like an idiot then. You didn't forget to look at Gu Yuan, who was on the verge of explosion. In a provocative manner, "What are you looking at?" Liu Yuan felt boundless shame and anger wash over her. Not only had someone violated her bed, but she was being publicly flirted with and taken advantage of in front of all the 9 Sword Mountain disciples. Liu Yuan had already intended to kill, just as she was about to use her spiritual power to shake you off. She found that she couldn't move. She couldn't even release her spiritual power. It was then that she realized a formless pressure was emanating from your body, forcefully pressing her spiritual power back to her danshin. The Great River Sword Domain, within a foot, I'm invincible. You were the world Liu Yuan was in? This is Sword Domain. Impossible. Liu Yuan's heart skipped a beat. No one knew the power of this Sword Domain better than her. The rarity of the Sword Domain was comparable to a top-level expert. Only the Sect Master, the Empress, had mastered it. You, a useless disciple who hasn't even reached the Foundation establishment stage. How could you have it? Liu Yuan was about to collapse. Since she couldn't control her spiritual power, she would use her sword feathers. She used her mind to release them, almost instantly. Powerful sword feathers shot from Liu Yuan's eyes, the sword light like rain, like beads. Like a celestial maiden scattering flowers, however, you only felt a tremor, and the Great River Sword Domain around you remained undamaged. The powerful sword feathers seemed to have sunk into a surging river. Disappearing without a trace, Liu Yuan seemed to have been shocked by electricity, and you stuck your face closer with a drunken expression, staring at Liu Yuan's eyes. I must say your eyes are quite pretty, with wind, clouds, and moon, but why am I the only one not reflected in them? Liu Yuan was instantly lost for words, her face instantly turned red, and she even forgot she was going to kill you. This drunken flirtatious comment left the disciples of the entire 9 Sword Mountain dumbfounded. He was flirting with the sect's eldest senior sister in front of everyone. The unique scent of alcohol, which numbed the nerves, mixed with the male aura, rushed into her nostrils. It was the first time Liu Yuan had ever encountered such a straightforward situation. It was also the first time a man had gotten so close to her. Her heart was beating like a little deer. This guy's face isn't bad, she thought. But he can't say such cheesy things in front of all the disciples of 9 Sword Mountain. You, now, were fearless as a transmigrator. Your biggest wish in your normal days was to flirt with the female disciples of Sword Feather Peak using your sword skills. It was just that your strength didn't allow it before you transmigrated. But this is your dream, your home field. So why not do whatever you want and release some emotions? Because Liu Yuan's spiritual power was suppressed and couldn't be released. The powerful Great River Sword Domain had already messed up her hair. Your hair is messy, you said with a smirk. You boldly reached out and brushed Liu Yuan's hair behind her ear. Her heart was about to leap out of her chest, her face flushed with tension. She whispered, "Is it still messy? You've gone mad? Let me go." A hint of loss flickered across your lips as you said, "Maybe it's my heart that's messy." The entire sky. Hundreds of Ana-looking disciples all exploded. Fuck, he's so flamboyant. This guy is really something when he's drunk. What a beast. Finally, Bai Yue, the master of Jian Yufeng, couldn't stand it anymore. Who is Liu Yuan? She's the mainstay of his Jian Yufeng, the future master of the peak, in public. This is simply outrageous. That brat from Jian Leifeng is really going too far. He's just like his useless master. This is simply intolerable. Tie that kid up and let the master of Jian Leifeng come and explain in person, before the long enforcement elder of Jian Yufeng could step forward. Bu Yuan, who had already exploded on the spot, completely went berserk. Beast, I'll take your life today. 10,000 swords returned to the sect. Gu Yuan let out a low shout, the blue sword intent sword. And the powerful sword intent was awe-inspiring. One after another, blue sword beams shot out from his body, as if they were going to tear you to pieces. 10,000 swords returned to the sect is the most powerful sword move Gu Yuan has mastered at present. He's not trying to stop you, but to kill you directly, Bai Yue exclaimed, although he didn't know what method you used to repel Gu Yuan just now. But the same method shouldn't appear a second time. After all, you're just a useless refining stage disciple. Let me go quickly. He'll kill you. Seeing the sword light gathering around the enraged Gu Yuan, Liu Yuan was also instantly brought back to reality. She didn't know why she was reminding Chen Changfeng. Shouldn't he be killed by Gu Yuan? Liu Yuan unconsciously clenched her fists. Her expression was slightly dazed and flustered. Her face turned slightly red. Why was she worried about this dissolute bastard? Kill me. I'm afraid he doesn't have the ability. You were still bleary-eyed, as if you hadn't woken up from the dream yet. You mumbled in your sleep, "One sword, the sword of the great river." Liu Yuan was slightly stunned and couldn't help but say, "What nonsense are you talking about again? Now, if you don't want to die, let me go." Only I can block Gu Yuan's 10,000 swords return to the sect before she could finish speaking. You reached out and took off the jade hairpin on her head. With no sword in hand, but a sword in heart. Everything in the world can be a sword. Watch my sword. 10,000 sword art. Your body turned 180 degrees with Liu Yuan, and you sent her to the outer edge of the square. With the release of the Great River Sword domain, you held Liu Yuan's jade hairpin in your right hand and drew a perfect arc in the air. The sky, filling blue sword beams of 10,000 swords returned to the sect, suddenly changed direction when they flew to a zhong in front of you. The tens of thousands of sword beams that were originally going to skewer you actually turned into a long river of sword energy. Gently swirling around you, blood. You pointed the jade hairpin at the sky. The 10,000 sword beams of 10,000 swords returned to the sect actually changed direction and gradually roared towards the sky. Above the sky, 10,000 swords exploded at the same time, and sharp blue light beams burst out from the air. At the same time, Gu Yuan was severely backlashed. He uncontrollably spat out a mouthful of blood mist from the air, and his body was sent flying like a cannonball for 200 meters. The cyan sword light in Gu Yuan's blood, red eyes dimmed a bit. He looked at you in shock. This is impossible. Thousands of people both in the sky and on the ground suddenly fell silent. Isn't Chen Changfeng a disciple of the Miscellaneous Affairs Hall? When did he complete the foundation, establishment? When did he break through to the god, transformation realm? When did he become so strong, just with a jade hairpin? He broke the famous sword move of Jian Yufeng and easily defeated Gu Yuan, who ranked third among the young disciples of the entire Zhujian mountain. What a no sword in hand, sword in heart. Everything in the world can be a sword. So domineering Liu Yuan, who was closest to Chen Changfeng, felt it most vividly, that surging sword intent like a great river just now. She thought she definitely couldn't withstand it at just 20 years old. He had comprehended something that the sect master couldn't fully control, the sword domain by Yue. The master of Jian Yufeng was extremely shocked. Invincible in dreams, this wine is really great. At this time, you were extremely happy. It was like everything you thought of came true. What else could it be if it wasn't a dream? Until now, you still thought you were just dreaming. So you completely let yourself go, completely ignoring everything. You took out a jar of 100-a-year-old fine wine from the storage ring again. Then you winked at the dumbfounded Liu Yuan and, in front of everyone, raised the jar and drank it crazily. You drank like a fish. The entire Jian Yufeng, both in the sky and on the ground, was silent. Only the sound of you gulping down the wine was like thunder. But how could Gu Yuan let it go, as a powerful god, transformation realm cultivator, being defeated by a trashcha, refining stage disciple? He was filled with hatred. With a sword cry, Gu Yuan finally took out his origin sword, Chengying. Chengying is also one of the 9 famous swords of Zhujian Mountain, a treasure of the Fengzhen. My body is like a sword. As soon as the sword intent was activated, a 10-meter tall blue figure suddenly appeared behind Gu Yuan. An extremely powerful blue sword intent rushed towards you. In an instant, everyone's eyes were once again focused on you. You seemed to never get enough of the wine. You were still drinking with your head up, letting the wine wet your white shirt and flow down your chest. But you were still drunk, still unrestrained. I have a pot of wine, enough to comfort my wandering heart. Flowers fall, startling the wild geese, when the sword rises. It changes the universe. You held the Jiaolu hairpin and slashed diagonally in the air. A surging and invisible sword intent shot straight into the sky, meeting the powerful Chengying sword. The invisible sword intent and the Chengying sword collided in the air, under the gaze of countless eyes. The invisible sword intent actually defiantly blocked the attack of the Chengying sword. On the contrary, Gu Yuan couldn't withstand the impact of this sword intent. His figure was like a fired cannonball, quickly being sent flying. The virtual shadow behind him almost dissipated. The Chengying sword was also sent flying back. He took out the treasure of the Fengzhen. Gu Yuan with the Chengying sword was being bullied, and it was in front of countless disciples of Zhujian Mountain. Everyone who witnessed this battle, both in the sky and on the ground, was shocked to the point of their scalps tingling. The young figure in the field, who seemed about to get drunk but never fell, gave people a sense of invincibility. Even the Chengying sword, one of the 9 famous swords, wasn't worthy of him drawing his sword. This kind of drunken and carefree emotion not only infected countless disciples, but even Yuan beside you couldn't help swallowing a mouthful of saliva. Her eyes were filled with fluctuating light, the 4th level of sword intent. My heart is like a sword. One sword breaks the sky. The severely bullied Gu Yuan didn't stop there. That sword intent just now seemed to have shattered his Dao heart. A clear sword cry came from the Chengying sword body, and then it merged with Gu Yuan's body. My heart is like a sword. Man and sword unite as one. Gu Yuan stepped on the ground and rushed towards you with all his might. This was also the most powerful sword in his life, facing the powerful and unstoppable sword energy. The corners of your mouth curled up slightly. This time, you didn't make a move again. You were drunk, raising the wine in the jar, and the great river sword intent spread throughout the world. I want to see the celestial palace and the sky. Travel around the 8-direction sea, drink the wine of the 9-month sky. Only my drunken heart, the great river sword intent. The next second, powerful sword beams suddenly shot out from your body. In almost an instant, a spherical sword light screen was erected around you with a loud bang. The man, sword, united Chengying sword directly slashed onto the sword light screen in front of you. Sword light against sword light. The Chengying sword light exploded in the air. Gu Yuan's figure was like a cannonball again, being blasted into the ground. The Chengying sword flew far away and crashed into the side of the main hall of Sword Feather Peak with a deafening sound. A shocking scene for everyone. You were still standing in the same place, completely unmoved. Even the bluestone slab under your feet was intact. On the other hand, Gu Yuan had been blasted under the bluestone slab, and his fate was unknown, while everyone was still in shock. Bai Yue finally moved, although he was shocked by your performance. He didn't want to see you continue in such a drunken state, and at this time, his attitude had already undergone a shocking reversal. With such potential, the 9-sword mountain would naturally cultivate you with all its heart. This was the reality of this world, where strength was supreme. However, you had also gotten yourself into trouble. You had flirted with the eldest senior sister of Sword Feather Peak, Liu Yuan, and seriously injured Gu Yuan. The number 1 of Sword Blind Peak, Sword Feather Peak might be willing to reason with you, but Sword Blind Peak would definitely not let you off so easily. If they didn't control you now, who knows what outrageous things you might do while drunk. It would be too late to regret it then. The safest way was to capture you and hand you over to the Empress so that she could protect you. Bai Yue was protecting you out of his admiration of your talent, which was completely different from his earlier attitude of wanting to cripple you and expel you from the sect. Just as Bai Yue grabbed your shoulder, wanting to use his spiritual power to dispel your drunkenness, his expression suddenly changed drastically. He was shocked to discover that your Qi and blood were surging at an alarming rate. Your internal organs were trembling, and your blood was surging like a great river. The spiritual power that Bai Yue had infused into you was forcibly dispersed. Bai Yue subconsciously loosened his grip. The spiritual power collided with the sword intent. Just like when Gu Yuan was repelled, a crisp sound echoed, and a circle of air was blasted out. Such strong sword intent, Bai Yue cried out. Discovering that a sword mark had appeared on the palm of his hand, you, in your drunken state, had no idea of Bai Yu's intentions. You were a bit displeased that you were grabbed so innocently. Your drunkenness was at its peak, and the aftereffects of 11 jars of strong liquor had finally exploded completely during the battle with Gu Yuan. Bai Yue, listen up, in my world. Even the Sect Master Empress can't bully me, with a sound like a buzzing bee. An even stronger sword intent erupted from your body. You held Liu Yuan's jade hairpin, swaying and dancing, and still talking nonsense like in a dream, the entire Sword Feather Peak. Everyone in the sky and on the ground, all the disciples and experts, looked at each other in confusion. Some were even surprised to find that the surrounding air was twisting and changing suddenly. Bai Yu's face changed dramatically because he felt an unprecedented pressure and fear from you. This attack had actually reached the level of a Tribulation Stage 7 expert. A golden light flashed in Bai Yu's eyes. A genius. The great river sword intent around you also completely erupted. You pointed the jade hairpin to the sky and let out a long roar. Drunken God sword intent. Great river sword comes from the sky. A magnificent drunken God sword intent burst from your body, possessing a momentum as if it would soar 90. Zeroly into the sky suddenly. The color of the sky and earth changed. Above the full moon, wind and clouds raged, and muffled thunder rumbled. as if suppressing this world-destroying sword aura in an instant. The dark clouds above the nine-sword mountain trembled violently, as if they had been cut open by a sword torn apart from the middle. A beam of scarlet moonlight, accompanied by falling celestial flowers, shone down on you. A gleaming white longsword descended like a shooting star chasing the moon. Yue looked at this scene in shock. The sword intent has sublimated again. Then, a majestic sword intent instantly condensed into a surging river of swords behind you, surging forward like turbulent waves with a single slash. Sword energy traversed the mountains and rivers, and 10,000 swords followed, like a rushing river that never turns back. Yue panicked and shouted, "Disciples, listen up!" Form the mountain protecting sword formation. Immediately following that, all the female disciples of Sword Feather Peak reacted. Dozens of various immortal swords took flight. They could all sense that if this sword was unleashed, Sword Feather Peak would be gone. The entire nine-sword mountain was awakened at this moment. Sword Emperor without a sword, no. That's not the Sword Emperor's aura. In the main hall of Sword Flood Peak, the Sect Master Empress Ling Yeking suddenly opened her eyes. In the next second, she disappeared from the main hall. Just as the surging river of swords was about to crash down, it turned into fine points of light and disappeared above Sword Feather Peak. What happened? The entire plaza was silent. The great river sword had also disappeared at this moment. Everyone came to their senses and looked at you, only to discover that you had fallen asleep on the ground. The clouds returned, the full moon hung high, and everything returned to normal at this moment. A disciple finally came back to his senses. Holy crap, that was strong for that one moment. I felt like I was losing my respect. Yue, the master of Sword Feather Peak, was still in shock, his face pale. He ordered, "Why are the people from the law enforcement hall so slow? Quickly, tie him up and take him back." "Master, should we ... maybe not," a gentle voice like a nightingale sounded. With a hint of nervousness, Yuan pleaded. Yu's expression softened slightly, and he said in a relatively gentle tone, "You don't have to worry in the future. I will make sure he gives you justice." Yuan glanced at you, who was being tied up by the elders of the law enforcement hall. "No. Master, I mean, maybe we should just let it go in 10 days. The sword asking tournament will start ... double quotes. As soon as she said this, everyone was stunned. This guy had violated the eldest senior sister's bed. But the eldest senior sister wanted to let it go in the high sky. Several figures broke through the air and finally arrived late. The person at the head was a woman. Her eyes were deep and mysterious. Combined with the exquisite long sword at her feet, she looked both noble and aloof. The person who came was the Empress of the Nine-Sword Mountain, Ling Yeking.